If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night during a full moon, feeling an unexplained distress, a free-floating anxiety that seems to come from nowhere, a sense that something is wrong even when everything should be perfectly fine, then what I'm about to reveal today could completely change the way you understand your own nervous system, because there's a scientific reason for this. And that reason was mapped out by Carl Jung almost a century ago, long before we had the technology to prove it. Now, research from Andrew Huberman's lab at Stanford is confirming something that empaths and highly sensitive people have known intuitively for generations. The full moon isn't just an astronomical phenomenon. It activates specific circuits in the brain that most people don't even notice. But if you're an empath, if you carry hyper-responsive mirror neurons, if your nervous system has been calibrated to pick up on what others miss, then the full moon becomes a kind of silent torture. And the most disturbing thing is that almost no one talks about it. Because admitting that the moon affects our behavior sounds like superstition. It sounds like magical thinking. It sounds like something serious people shouldn't take seriously, but Jung took it seriously, and Huberman is taking it seriously now. Before I reveal the exact mechanism that connects the full moon to an empath's suffering, I need you to understand something about how your brain processes light. There's a structure in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. It's the command center for your circadian rhythm. It receives information directly from your eyes about how much light there is in the environment. And it uses that information to regulate practically everything in your body. Hormones, temperature, mood, sleep, digestion, immune system. All of this is controlled by this tiny cluster of neurons that responds to light. And here's the problem. The full moon emits blue light. Not as much as the sun, of course, but enough for your suprachiasmatic nucleus to register it. For most people, this doesn't mean much. Their systems are robust enough to filter out this information as irrelevant. But if you're highly sensitive, if your nervous system operates on a finer level of calibration, then even this small amount of moonlight can be enough to disrupt your biological clock. And that's just the beginning, because Jung discovered something much deeper about the relationship between the moon and the human psyche. In his writings on archetypes and the collective unconscious, Jung mapped the moon as one of the most powerful and ancient symbols of humanity. He associated it directly with the shadow self, with the feminine principle, with everything that remains hidden in the darkness of consciousness. Jung wrote that the moon represents the undeveloped, unrealized, or rejected parts of ourselves. It's as if it were a mirror of the unconscious, reflecting back everything we'd rather not see. And when the moon is full, when it reaches its peak of luminosity, something happens on a symbolic level that directly affects the psyche. It's as if the entire collective unconscious is illuminated. And if you're an empath, if you already carry a deeper connection with the unconscious, then this illumination becomes overwhelming. It's not just your unconscious that's activated, it's the unconscious of everyone around you. Because empaths don't just feel their own emotions, they absorb the emotions of the environment. And during the full moon, when everyone's emotions are closer to the surface, the empath becomes a kind of emotional lightning rod, receiving discharges that aren't even theirs. Huberman explained in one of his episodes that there is a specific network of neurons, called the mirror neuron system, that allows us to mirror the emotions and internal states of other people. In most people, this system operates at a moderate level, but in empaths, recent research shows that this system is hyper-responsive. The mirror neurons fire with much more intensity. It's as if the volume is permanently turned up to max. Now imagine that hyper-responsive system during a full moon, when everyone around you is more emotional, when the collective unconscious is more active, when each person's shadow self is closer to the surface, the empath has no choice but to absorb it all. And the result is exactly what so many report: insomnia, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, emotions that seem to come from nowhere, deep exhaustion even without having done anything physically tiring. But hold on, because what I'm about to reveal now goes even deeper. Jung identified that the moon isn't just a symbol of the unconscious, it's specifically associated with the mother archetype. He wrote that many things that awaken devotion or feelings of reverence can be maternal symbols: the church, the city, the sky, the earth, the forests, the sea, quiet waters, matter, the underworld, and the moon. This means that when the moon is full, it activates not only the general unconscious, but specifically our maternal wounds, our attachment patterns, our most primal needs for safety and emotional nurturing. For the empath, this is devastating, because empaths frequently carry childhood wounds related to having been the emotional caretakers of their families from a very young age. They learned to feel what others were feeling as a survival mechanism, to anticipate needs, to avoid conflicts, to keep the peace. And the full moon reactivates all of those wounds. It's as if the sky is reminding the empath of all the times they had to absorb emotions that weren't theirs, all the times they carried burdens that didn't belong to them, all the times they got lost in caring for others and forgot about themselves. Huberman talks about how the nervous system stores stress patterns, how traumas and repeated experiences create neural pathways that can be reactivated by environmental triggers. The full moon functions exactly like one of those triggers. It doesn't create suffering out of nothing. It amplifies what's already there. It brings to the surface what was buried. It illuminates what we'd rather keep in the darkness. And that's why empaths suffer more. Not because they're weak, not because they're defective, but because they carry more unconscious material. Because they've absorbed more emotions throughout their lives, because their nervous systems are more overloaded, and the full moon exposes all of it. Now, there is a detail that Dr. Seema Hattar, chief of the section on light and circadian rhythms at the National Institute of Mental Health, explained in an episode of the Huberman Lab that completely changes our understanding of this phenomenon. He revealed that light doesn't just affect sleep, it directly modulates mood, appetite, learning, and overall mental health by aligning or misaligning our internal circadian rhythm. And here's the key. The full moon doesn't need to literally wake you up to affect you. Even if you sleep through the night, even if your eyes are closed, the light intensity of the environment is still registered by your system. And if your system is already sensitive, that information can be enough to create misalignment. Andrew Huberman explained that very faint red light, below 10 lux, literally doesn't affect sleep, but lunar light, especially during a full moon, can exceed that threshold for highly sensitive people. And it's not just the direct light, it's the change in the overall atmosphere, the difference in barometric pressure, the subtle alterations in the electromagnetic field, all these variables that most people don't even notice, but that an empath system picks up as if they were alarms. Carl Jung would have understood this perfectly. He believed that the collective unconscious isn't just a metaphor, it's a psychic reality that connects all human beings. And cosmic events like the full moon create waves in that collective field that affect everyone, but are felt more intensely by those with heightened sensitivity. And that's why psychiatric hospitals historically report more admissions during full moons. That's why the word lunatic comes from lunar. And that's why cultures around the world, independently of contact with each other, developed rituals and specific precautions for full moon nights. It wasn't superstition. It was empirical observation accumulated over millennia. And now, neuroscience is finally catching up to what ancestral wisdom always knew. But here's what Carl Jung discovered that goes beyond all of this, and that Andrew Huberman hasn't yet addressed directly in his episodes. Carl Jung saw the moon as inherently ambivalent. It was neither good nor bad. It was both things simultaneously. It could be dangerous, even treacherous, but it also offered the opportunity to dive into the depths in search of the wisdom that resides in the unconscious. And this means that the empath's suffering during the full moon isn't just torture. It's also opportunity. Opportunity to see what normally remains hidden, to process emotions that have been repressed, to integrate parts of the shadow self that need attention. The full moon functions like a spotlight on the stage of the unconscious, and if you know how to use it, instead of just suffering with it, the full moon can become one of the most powerful tools for your psychological development. But for that, you need a protocol. And that's exactly what I'm going to reveal now, based both on Carl Jung's writings on shadow self-integration and on Andrew Huberman's research on nervous system regulation. I've developed a hybrid protocol specifically for empaths to navigate full moons without being destroyed by them. First, the preparation. 3 days before the full moon, start reducing your social exposure. This doesn't mean isolating yourself completely. It means being more selective about which energies you allow into your field. It means saying no to draining commitments. It means creating spaces of intentional silence. Andrew Huberman explains that the nervous system needs periods of low stimulation to recover. And if you know that a phase of high stimulation is coming, preparing the ground is essential. Second, luminous protection. During the 3 nights around the full moon, darken your room completely. Use blackout curtains. Cover any source of light. The idea is to give your suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, the clear message that it's night. Regardless of what the moon is doing out there, Andrew Huberman recommends that even faint red light can be tolerated, but for highly sensitive empaths, the darker, the better during this period. Third, the Jungian practice. Carl Jung developed a technique called active imagination that is perfect for full moon nights. It consists of sitting in silence, closing your eyes, and allowing images from the unconscious to emerge spontaneously. Don't force anything. Just observe what appears. During the full moon, these images will be more intense. The emotions that emerge will be rawer. The contents of the unconscious will be more accessible. Instead of fighting against it, use it. Let the emotions come. Observe them without completely identifying with them. Ask yourself where they come from. Question whether they are really yours, or if you absorbed them from others. Fourth, the recording. Carl Jung was obsessive about recording. He kept the famous Red Book where he documented his journeys through the unconscious, and you should do the same during full moons. It doesn't need to be elaborate. It can be simple. Just write down what you felt, what emotions arose, what dreams you had, what patterns you noticed. Over time, you'll start to see cycles. You'll start to anticipate what's coming. You'll start to understand your own unconscious in ways that would be impossible without this record. Fifth, the post-full moon integration. In the 3 days after the full moon, set aside time to process what emerged. This can be through conversation with someone you trust. It can be through therapy. It can be through somatic practices like yoga or walking in nature. The point is that the material that the full moon brought to the surface should not be simply pushed back down. It emerged for a reason. It needs to be integrated. And if you can do this consistently, moon after moon, Something remarkable begins to happen. The suffering diminishes, not because the moon stops affecting you, but because you've developed tools to work with that energy instead of being dominated by it. And that's the crucial difference between the empath who suffers indefinitely and the empath who transforms their sensitivity into wisdom. There's something more that I need to reveal before continuing. Carl Jung observed a fascinating pattern in his patients during different lunar phases. He noticed that dreams changed dramatically. During full moons, the dreams tended to be more intense, more loaded with symbolism, more difficult to forget upon waking, and this makes perfect sense neurologically. Andrew Huberman explains that REM sleep, which is when most dreams happen, is deeply influenced by the circadian rhythm. And if the full moon is disturbing that rhythm, even subtly, the architecture of sleep changes. For empaths, this means more vivid dreams, more emotions processed during the night, more unconscious material emerging to the surface. Many empaths report that during full moons, they dream of people they've never met. They dream of places they've never visited. They dream of events that seem to belong to another era, another life. Jung called these dreams from the collective unconscious, dreams that don't just come from our personal experience, but from a shared reservoir of images and archetypes that all human beings carry. And the full moon seems to open that portal. And if you're an empath, if you're already more porous to the information from the unconscious, then during the full moon, you might access layers of information that normally remain inaccessible. This can be scary, it can be confusing, it can make you feel out of sync with normal reality, but it can also be incredibly revealing. Because full moon dreams often contain important messages, warnings about situations in your life, insights about relationships, revelations about your own path of development. The problem is that most people simply dismiss these dreams as brain oddities. But Jung insisted that every dream has meaning, and full moon dreams, because they're more charged, often contain the most important meanings. There's a phenomenon that sleep researchers have consistently documented for decades. During full moons, people take on average 5 more minutes to fall asleep. They sleep about 20 minutes less per night, and the sleep they do get is more fragmented, with more awakenings throughout the night. This has been confirmed in controlled studies, where participants slept in labs without any access to external light. Even so, their sleep patterns changed in synchronicity with the moon. As if there's some kind of connection that goes beyond light. Jung would say, this proves the existence of the collective unconscious, that we're connected to cosmic rhythms in ways that materialistic science can't yet fully explain. Huberman would probably say that there are mechanisms not yet identified, perhaps related to electromagnetic fields or subtle gravitational variations, that would explain this phenomenon. Regardless of the explanation, the result is the same. The moon affects sleep, and sleep affects everything. For the empath, who already lives with a more reactive nervous system, less quality sleep during the full moon means less capacity to regulate emotions, less capacity to distinguish your emotions from other people's emotions, less capacity to maintain healthy boundaries, and this creates a vicious cycle. The full moon disrupts sleep. Disrupted sleep reduces emotional regulation. Reduced emotional regulation makes the empath more vulnerable to external emotions. These external emotions further disrupt sleep, and so on. Moon after moon. Unless you know how to break this cycle. There's a practice that Jung specifically recommended for working with lunar energies that almost no one knows about. He called it dialogue with the shadow self. For men, the shadow self is the internal feminine archetype. For women, It would be the internal masculine archetype. And the moon, being associated with the feminine principle, directly activates the shadow self. Jung believed that many of the emotional problems that we experience come from a non-integrated shadow self, from a fragmented relationship with our inner feminine or masculine side. And during the full moon, this fragmentation becomes more evident. The dialogue consists of entering a meditative state, visualizing your shadow self as a feminine or masculine figure, and literally talking to it, asking what it needs, what it's trying to communicate, why it's so agitated during this period. It sounds strange. It sounds almost like deliberate madness. But Jung did this for years and documented profound transformations in patients who followed this practice. Modern neuroscience would call this a form of ego state therapy, of accessing different parts of the psyche and creating integration between them. Huberman would probably say that this practice activates the default mode network of the brain, the same network involved in empathy, self-reflection, and emotional processing. Regardless of the language we use, the result is real. Empaths who learn to dialogue with their shadow self during full moons report that the unexplained distress diminishes drastically, that the emotions cease to be overwhelming, that a sense of peace emerges where before there was chaos. There's an aspect of the relationship between empaths and the full moon that's almost never discussed, but that Jung considered fundamental. The full moon amplifies not just negative emotions, it amplifies everything. This means that if you learn to direct this energy, it can also amplify your intuition, your creativity, your ability to perceive patterns that others don't perceive. Many of the greatest artists, poets, and visionaries in history work deliberately during full moons, not despite the emotional intensity, but because of it. Because there's a thin line between suffering and genius, between being destroyed by sensitivity and using it as a source of profound insight. Jung called this opus contra naturam, the work against nature, the alchemical art of transforming poison into medicine, of using exactly what could destroy you as fuel for your evolution. And that's what the full moon offers to the empath, who knows how to use it, not just survival, but transformation, the ability to access states of consciousness that would be impossible in other phases of the cycle, to see connections that would remain hidden, to create works that come from depths that most people never access. But this requires practice. It requires discipline. It requires a framework to navigate the intensity without being destroyed by it. And that's exactly what the combination of Jung and Huberman offers. The deep psychological wisdom of one, validated by the rigorous neuroscience of the other. There's one last point that I need to address before wrapping up. Many empaths develop a relationship of fear with the full moon. They start to have free-floating anxiety days before. They start to prepare for the suffering as if it were inevitable. They start to see the moon as an enemy, as something to be feared and avoided. Jung warned against this type of posture. He said that what we resist persists, that the more we fight against a psychic force, the more power we give to it. The full moon is not your enemy. It's an aspect of nature that exists independently of your opinion about it. The question isn't whether it will affect you, it's how you will respond to that effect. You can choose fear, resistance, victimization, or you can choose curiosity, acceptance, transformation. Jung chose the second option and documented some of the most profound discoveries in the history of psychology, exactly because he was willing to dive into the waters that others feared. Huberman chooses the second option every time he investigates phenomena that conventional science would dismiss as superstition, and you can make that same choice. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean the discomfort will magically disappear. But it does mean that you'll be in control of your response, that you'll have tools to navigate, that you'll transform an experience of passive suffering into an active practice of development. And that changes everything. I want to share one last insight that can completely transform your relationship with the lunar phases. Carl Jung believed that there are different types of empaths, just like there are different psychological types, and each type responds differently to the full moon. Some empaths feel it primarily in the body. Muscle tension, headaches, a sensation of heaviness. These are the somatic empaths, and they need body-based practices during the full moon, yoga, hiking, dancing, anything that moves the energy through the physical body. Other empaths feel it primarily in their emotions, crying for no reason, feeling unexplained rage, experiencing waves of sadness or euphoria. These are the emotional empaths, and they need emotional processing practices, expressive writing, talking with trusted friends, art as a form of expression. There are also empaths who feel it primarily in their thoughts, mental rumination, intrusive thoughts, difficulty concentrating. These are the cognitive empaths, and they need mental clarity practices, meditation, mindful breathing, disconnecting from stimuli. And then there are empaths who feel it on a level that's difficult to describe, a sensation that the veil between worlds is thinner. Perceptions that seem to come from another place, prophetic dreams. These are the spiritual empaths, and they need grounding practices, contact with nature, rituals that create structure, connection with traditions that honor the lunar cycles. Most empaths are a combination of these types, and knowing which is your predominant type allows you to create a personalized protocol for full moons. Andrew Huberman frequently talks about the importance of personalization in protocols, that what works for one person may not work for another. That understanding your own biology is essential for optimizing results. You can often hear him talk about that on the Huberman Lab podcast from Stanford. The same goes for lunar sensitivity. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. The somatic empath who tries to meditate during the full moon might get frustrated because their body needs movement. The emotional empath who tries to do intense exercise might become even more overwhelmed. Knowing your type is the first step towards creating a healthy relationship with the lunar cycles. And that's something that neither Carl Jung nor Andrew Huberman have directly explained. But it emerges naturally when you combine the insights of both. If you've made it this far, if this content is revealing something important about your own experience, I want to ask you for something. This type of research, connecting Carl Jung and Andrew Huberman in ways that almost no one does, requires hours of study and the courage to say things that academia would prefer to keep separate. The super thanks button down below isn't just financial support. It's you saying that this work matters. That there are people out there who want to understand why they feel what they feel during full moons. That the bridge between deep psychology and neuroscience needs to be built. If this video is helping you finally understand your own nervous system, consider expressing that by clicking the golden heart. But regardless of support, there's something more that I need to leave you with before I finish. Carl Jung wrote that whoever looks outside dreams, whoever looks inside awakens. The full moon is an invitation to look inside. Yes, it brings discomfort. Yes, it exposes what we'd prefer to keep hidden. Yes, it amplifies emotions that we'd like to avoid. But that's exactly why it's so valuable. Because real growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. Real growth happens when we're forced to face what we avoid. When the defenses fall, when the shadow self is illuminated, and we have no choice but to see it. And that's what the full moon offers the empath, not gratuitous torture, but an opportunity for integration. Andrew Huberman would say that you can control your biology, or it will control you. Carl Jung would say that you can integrate your shadow, or it will possess you. I say that you can learn to dance with the moon, or you can be dragged along by it. The choice is yours. But now you have information that almost no one has. You know that you're not crazy. That there's a scientific reason for what you feel. That Carl Jung mapped this out a century ago, and Andrew Huberman is confirming it now. And more importantly, you have a protocol. Use it. Before I finish, I want to know from you, have you ever noticed that your sleep and emotions are different during full moons? Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night feeling something you couldn't explain? Comment down below. Not for personal exposure, but because when you name your experience, when you take it out of the darkness and bring it into the light, you take away some of the power that it has over you. And your story might help another empath who's out there feeling crazy for feeling what they feel. Remember, the moon is not your enemy. She's your oldest teacher. Learn from her.